Good morning again, Wednesday, March 11th, 2026 here in House Transportation. We have the agency, Joel Perigo is here in chair again, along with Jeremy Reed. We are talking about transportation alternatives. Big part of the conversation and the feedback and the pieces that we had gotten through as the committee. There seemed to be a fair amount of agreement about looking at the transportation alternatives programs related to also how it relates to requirements about a certain number of water quality projects being funded. We heard testimony about a significant amount of projects being canceled that was in this arena. We have some federal funding that we're concerned about whether it will or won't get used up and out before we lose it. And then I also understand that puts us in a position to additional rounds of federal funding that we may or may not be eligible for because we have a backlog in this arena. And I think that I understood the committee would like to try to do something about this potentially in this T-bill. So that's why we're on this subject for right now this morning. And with that, if that hopefully makes, as clear as mud, it's all help us move forward in relation to that topic.
So for the record, my name is Joel Perigo. I am the V-Trans Municipal Assistance Program Manager. So the Transportation Alternatives Grant Program is a program administered through my group. And so I'm going to do this again. I just sort of laying the groundwork here. These are the statutes that we're most specifically looking at and the proposal that you heard from Jeremy.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't share yet. I'm sorry. Let me do that real quick. Thank you for that before I got too far.
I can also tell you what.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry about that. So again, just laying the groundwork of the statute that we are proposing to make changes to. You heard from Jeremy, I think about 2 weeks ago now. They're codified in 19 VSA section 38. Currently, it reads that the agency is allowed to make grants in the maximum award of $300,000. There was a provision in the fiscal year 23 T-bill that was notwithstanding language that allows us to make awards up to $600,000 through fiscal year 27, but that will sunset at that point. The other statutes say that we are required to make the awards between January and March. And furthermore, that 50% of the grant funds are reserved for these environmental mitigation projects, with the remaining 50% eligible for all other activities, with a preferential weighting on bike ped projects. And so the proposal that Jeremy had laid out a couple weeks ago was to increase that maximum grant allocation to 1.2 million, preferably in statute, reduce the reserved funds for environmental mitigation projects to a maximum of 25%, and retain the preferential weighting of the bike ped projects.
Representative Couch has a question for you.
Just the preferential weighing for bike ped, that means that it's not anything to do with the environmental side, it's the other side. There are other categories that you go into, like what
Historic preservation,
okay.
scenic overlooks. We don't get a lot of applications in those, but those are the other. I get into that a little bit further on.
So this really is just proposing a higher cap. And instead of 50-50, it's 75-25, and continuing that 25 will still go to environmental mitigation. So that has nothing to do with bike ped.
Right.
But the other 75, if it's a bike ped, it tends to have a higher weight.
Yeah.
In your process.
And if I could share, Jeremy Reed, Chief Engineer, and we threw out 25% as a starting point. If the committee had a preference to actually reduce that to 20 or 0%, we absolutely would not object. We're seeking the most flexibility that we can.
Yeah, and I would ask the committee to sort of consider even going farther. I mean, I think, I've heard anecdotally from, other committees saying they really don't rely on this funding for a lot of the, environmental mitigation projects. This is a very small piece. And, anecdotally, I've heard they wouldn't care if we went to 100% one way. And we are allowed to do that by the federal funding.
Correct. I think it was when the Clean Water Bill passed that this started. Prior to that, it was, 100% was sort of all eligible categories. So,
Representative White, then Representative Allen.
Yeah, thank you. And just to ground us in the budget, we're talking about $4.5 million for proposed fiscal year 27. Does that sound right?
so the budget, of course, is going to show spending for this particular year, but our annual apportionment under the federal program is, it is 4.3 million-ish. So but the spending may accumulate depending on the way the projects roll out and go to
If you
construction.
had more from last year.
Right,
Oh,
right.
okay,
Exactly.
okay.
There's sort of a buildup.
I understand.
It could show $9 or $10 million. of
For
spending.
simplicity, though, we're looking at $4.5 million proposed for this year. There may be
Yes.
some left over. There might be
Right.
some carrying forward.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You award for whatever.
Yeah.
And then it has X amount of time to spend it, so it can
Yeah.
fluctuate when it actually. happens.
Exactly.
Representative
that
Wiley,
would-
I'm sorry, Representative Wiley's ahead of you, and then you.
Yeah, I think we have heard a lot of testimony about, the need that we cannot meet for bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure relative to the high demand for it, and also the fact that a lot of towns are deciding that the funding is insufficient for the salt sheds. So, and the fact that there are other buckets of money in other places for those larger infrastructure projects. So for me, this is a no-brainer to just give you guys a leeway to use it all for bike and ped and the other things.
And to be clear, these changes would not make it so that those projects are not eligible. They're still eligible under the program. They still could potentially score high and get funded as an environmental mitigation project. It would just be a slight disadvantage given the preferential weighting, and no reservation of funds.
So then what we're talking about, $4.3 million annual appropriation, that's 20%. And it's 80%. In other words, we multiply that times 80%, is that?
That's the federal portion.
Right. That was my question, is that like the 4.3 annual apportionment isn't out of state funds?
No, those are the federal funds component and requires a 20% match on top of it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And that 20% is out of local.
Local
So this
tax.
isn't taking any state transportation funds, really.
No state fund programs. No state funds are within this program.
It's all,
I say zero. The only thing is there's a small portion that matches our payroll.
Right.
That's outside of this conversation.
thank you.
And you review it and you reward it. You award it and you make sure that the 20% is collected from the
Right,
towns, but.
right. It's a reimbursement.
You're an administration function in this
Right.
piece.
Yes.
We are looking at changing the parameters from which you're allowed to give these awards.
Awards, correct.
Our goal to be, perhaps I think our goal is to be more flexible. But I know there's some concern around the maximum. I don't know if that's now the time or we need to go a little further for.
Well, I have some substantiating data that may help with the conversation further in if we go, so. Some of this we've already talked about, but the federal requirements, it's approximately 4.3 million. There's some, I think it does change throughout the life of bill, but not dramatically. Again, it's 80% federal, requires a 20% local cash match. There is a requirement that we put this money out through a competitive process. It's the only way for projects to be selected. And as the chair alluded to, we only have 4 years to obligate these funds. So, when it comes in one federal fiscal year, we have 4 years to obligate those funds. Otherwise, risk those funds lapsing and no longer being available to the law. there's a little caveat, like if we obligate them and the project doesn't spend them all and it comes back in, we have like an extra fiscal year or something like that. TA, this is the eligible project types. So on-road, off-road facilities. Then B is similar, but it's more related to non-drivers needing to access daily needs, so sidewalks within downtowns and things like that. Conversions of rail trails, constructions of turnouts, the community improvement activities, which historic preservation, I think, is the only thing we've ever received an application for in that category. And then F is the environmental mitigation category that we fund the salt sheds and the stormwater projects under. It was pointed out that it doesn't explicitly say that safe routes to school projects are eligible here, but they are eligible as infrastructure type projects through, we just don't have a dedicated safe routes to school program as part of our TA program.
Is this, so it's Safe Routes to School is eligible under a line about infrastructure, but
Well-
can it cover like non-infrastructure related, like technical assistance?
It can, so two different things, I'm hearing two different things. Technical assistance related to a project itself would be covered under this.
Mhm.
If it was more like educational components,
Right,
it is eligible. We are not doing that through TA right now, but our folks in highway safety are actually, they have a program project right now in the book, HSF 8023, to basically, because the highway safety funding is also eligible, or Safe Routes to School is also eligible under highway safety funding. And so they're implementing a strategy right now to basically bring back the Safe Routes to School program, start doing some more of that educational outreach, the non-implementation side of things. The implementation side is still eligible here, would always be eligible under this program.
but only if it's like infrastructure.
Correct. Under here, yes.
Okay, because my understanding was that the education component was also eligible under tab.
It is eligible, but what
Right.
I'm trying to say is that we're gonna fund that component under, because it's also eligible under highway safety,
Mhm.
which is same group that our active transportation group sits in.
Mhm.
It would be funded there instead of here.
Okay. Understood.
Representative Keiser, were you?
I didn't.
You didn't know? Just how it's shown.
So clarification on the 75-25%, which are proposed, which is on here, but it sounds like you guys are flexible on that. If we left it like that, then it would absolutely, you wouldn't have any leeway to this year it's gonna be 80-20 and, it would have to be that. So if we wanted to increase it, we could do one or two things. We could come up with a number, 100% 0, 80% 20, or we could also say, this is giving you the flexibility to choose and say, hey, we're focusing on bike ped. But that would be another possibility. And it sounds like today you would tell us if we had that opportunity, it would be more than 50-50. It would move in that direction.
Yes, we would welcome as much flexibility as you would give us. We quite frankly didn't want to appear greedy and ask for 100, but if there's a consideration of that, we would welcome that. Because again, as Joel said, doesn't preclude environmental mitigation, but it gives us that flexibility to ensure that we don't lapse federal funds while still, meeting the greatest need.
It's already there.
Yeah.
These are the eligible entities under the federal program. Probably 95% of our projects are with local governments. But you will see that, like, yeah, going back to safer school districts are eligible, as well as RPCs. So, and so I'm sort of getting at the concern of, funding all going into one pot or one area of the state. I'm trying to just demonstrate here, like, this is sort of the cycle that we've had over the last 5 years. We have projects in the smallest of towns as well as the biggest of towns. There's a breakdown of the funding here in a pie chart. There's some rounding things going on showing like Lamoille's at zero, but they truly aren't. There actually was some projects, but just trying to get a sense of like the distribution of projects across the state. This starts with state fiscal year 2018, which hard to remember the full history here, but again, back when that was right about the start of the Clean Water Days, this program at one point, 2018 and 19, was fully dedicated to those environmental mitigation projects, as well as we had the stormwater municipal mitigation stormwater program at the same time, and we were funding that at like $8 million. So there was a tremendous amount of investment in those projects back in those days. And then the statute opened it up 20 and 21, and then starting in 22 it said 1.1, and then starting in 23 it said we had to reserve 50% for the environmental mitigation. One thing I want to point out here is in these two circles, and I'm going to get to it a little bit here, but we've had a tremendous amount of cancellations, mostly in the environmental mitigation side of things. And we've had a backlog of funding. And that's where the potentially lapsing sort of comes in. And so our only way to help and make up for that is to award more money. So the state fiscal year 24, we actually awarded 8.8 million when we only had 4.3 coming in from the federal government for that particular year in an attempt to make up for those cancellations. But we're having cancellations faster than we can even make up for the dollars, to be quite honest. And again, in 25, we awarded 6.2 million. 26, we're just about to award. And I can tell you that we left money on the table again that we would have awarded to projects had we had enough applications. So
On the environmental side.
on the entire side of the house, I mean, so all the projects that were applied for will be funded. All the eligible, I'll say that, eligible projects will be funded.
Representative White?
I'm assuming, Joel, that all these cancellations came from substantially increased costs that are disallowing municipalities to move forward. Is that
Yeah.
a valid assumption?
Yeah. Moving on, actually, the next slide, it's right
Okay.
there. So these are the projects that we've had canceled over it says 19, but there's only like 1 or 2 projects in there from 19. There's none from 20. It's mostly more recent than 23, 24, 25. You can see the numerous salt sheds that were canceled just because the costs are somewhat prohibitive given the federal aid project development process. The local match goes up. So even when you see change in priorities, you could argue that could potentially be a cost consideration that when the local match went way above what was expected. So, but again, 35% cancellation rate for environmental mediation projects, which is an average of 1.9 million annually, or 44% of that appropriation. So it's difficult when we have all those cancellations. We only have 4 years to turn that money around.
I'm not sure if I'm formulating this correctly, or if they could just, but an increase in the max, the amount of local fund increase is also higher. If they don't have the money, how does that help? I guess, increasing the max versus the max, or am I getting ahead of my?
Sort of getting ahead of the presentation, but so that's another piece of it. We actually, let me go to the next one. So yeah, right here.
I'm sorry, Representative Lally has a question. Maybe we'll hit that first and then
Sure.
I'll hold off on my.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering what is the percentage of just in amplifying the costs of projects of some of our NEPA processes. I know this can be quite onerous for Bike Ped, but I'm imagining for a salt shed that can be even more impactful. And is that something that, that you've noticed has been cited as a barrier?
I mean, it's always something that's discussed, but it's the same, you know, it's the red tape that the agency needs to cut through. I mean, every single federal aid project has to go through it. I can't sit here and tell you that there's any sort of like specific costs associated with NEPA itself. You know, quite honestly, a lot of it is just the time that it takes to go through the process, and because of the project takes time and costs are escalating during that time, and
Yeah, Chair, if I could, so it's not just NEPA, right? Because generally we can satisfy NEPA by going through our state regulatory framework. So yes, NEPA is a component of that, but even if we said, and we couldn't, we don't have to meet NEPA, we'd still have to meet the state regulatory requirements. So there is a time component, but we're probably not doing anything above and beyond what we would need to do just to satisfy our state environmental regulatory requirements.
going back to the point that you were making, Chair, so there's plenty of projects out there that would fit the mold of the $1.2 million or even more. And I know you can't read this, and I'll provide this as a separate attachment, but so what's happening is we're giving out these $300,000 or $600,000 grants under TA, and then towns are coming to us under the Bike Ped program for supplemental funding. And we've had 40 of those projects since 2020 that we've had to administer 2 separate grants on for the same exact project. So still the same requirements, 80-20, but because we're capped at TA, we're only giving them 600 there, but then we have flexibility in the Bike Ped programming, and we add on to those projects. And because of that, there's a lot of administrative burden. We're having towns have to submit applications twice. We have to review them twice. There's programming with federal highways, reporting.
Yeah, I think Heinsberg's had a couple of these that have come through, one, we get the approval, got an estimate, get the approval, by the time you get the approval and whatnot, you find out, oh, it's gonna be a lot more, and we go through this process again. I would guess a lot of that in the last 5 to 6 years is due to construction cost increases. And now that those, forget the last 2 weeks, now that those seem to be somewhat settled down, you're still looking, hey, let's increase this cap. So, because I'm guessing with the cap before, people didn't ask for more than that.
Right, and they know they need to be competitive in nature when
Yeah.
they're submitting their application.
Yeah, I just wonder how much of it is because of the, post-pandemic surge in construction costs is more the problem, or, and I haven't made my mind up on whether this is, the best way to go forward.
It also, something we haven't done in the past, but certainly a flexibility that could be considered as part of that is sort of a contingency fund. But when towns are asking for the maximum amount, we're giving them that. And like, to be quite honest, $300,000 is what's written in statute. It gets you next to nothing. So with this, we might consider something like that where we save some funds that could be in a situation that you're saying a town goes out to bid, needs a little bit more money. We could consider that. But with the cap being so small, it's not realistic to.
I mean, we're weighing a small cap allows more towns to have something, right? But at the same time, if it's unrealistic cap, like you say, that's not gonna get you a heck of a lot. We're best to maybe up that cap so that, these things can fly out the door rather than get all muddled up and require 2 applications to finish a project. So it seems to make sense.
No, well, I got an opinion, I was the one that pushed for the, the cap. And the reason why, I suggested it back then is because we knew what the amount was at 4.3. Prior to that, I think it was half.
Right.
You know, we don't know what Congress is gonna do this fall. Could it go back to half? So, you know, if it's 2 million and we're doing 1.1, we're having two projects, what the heck's the point of this program? So I just wanted to know the amount of money that we were dealing with, so I would be really reluctant to go up to, you know, 1.2 without knowing the full picture. You know, this is something that we could revisit the budget adjustment. Hopefully by that time, we'll know what funds we're dealing with, but you know I have no problem going to 100%. Or anything like that, I'm very concerned about having that cap too.
If the cap's 1.2, then you're looking at 3 projects.
Theoretically, and then we don't know what the reauthorization is gonna be.
Yeah, that makes sense.
October, so.
So, yeah, that was my guess, so. Yeah, yeah, I was just in Senate and they were asking what the average costs of the projects were, and, you know, I would say. And I can back this up, I think, but, you know, just under $1 million typically for like a standard, and I'm talking about bike ped projects, really. I mean, that's the main customer here, really.
Yeah.
Certainly something I can dig into a little bit more. The one thing I'll say too is that we're holding $2 million back right now, and that's $2 million that's gonna potentially lapse if we can't get it out there and no longer is available. That's what we're really struggling with. And I don't think anybody wants to.
Well, that has to do with more with not the cap, it has to do with the 50% set aside.
Well,
Salt sheds, because that's what, 35% cancel rate. or 30.
it's all sort of related, but again, we're awarding 19 applications within days here.
Yeah,
And I can only guess that out of those 19 projects, some of them probably could have used some more of that money, but they were capped at $600,000. They
Yeah.
could only give them 600,000.
yeah, I understand that point, and you know, it is interesting that, you know, the amount of awards that are granted is close to almost like 100% a couple years, 75%. It's a lot better percentage compared to the other grants that we.
Agreed. Yeah.
You know, so then we're doing pretty good in that aspect of it, but again. If that cap was to change, I bet you that 70 to 100 would go to 30, 20. I mean, that's my concern. Yeah.
I think the information, I know you can't read that, I can't either right now. Those are all. Well, maybe not all, but most of those are bike ped projects. And all of those are completed or nearly completed projects, like literally going out to bid. And I certainly, you know, can break it down and show you that, you know, the need is there. And it's not to the point where we're gonna be funding, you know, I don't believe at least 2 projects per year at 2 point plus whatever $1 million. I don't think the towns can handle that in local match in one fell swoop either.
Well, the tiny section there, I blew it up on my computer. I noticed that one of them is our project in Shelburne,
Yeah.
which turned out to be an extraordinarily expensive project. It's a wonderful project. It's transformative, and we're very, very grateful for it. But the timing of hitting just when the pandemic hit and everything else just drove those costs up. And we're very grateful that the agency, you know, creatively drew from different sources, and we had ARPA funds on hand to meet the match, but you know, this is and hopefully that was like very atypical and not, you know, what we're seeing, but I feel like we're kind of in some uncharted territories with this. There's a lot of disruption in our world right now, a lot of things we don't control, and so I'm wondering if it's appropriate to rethink the cap in some way, because 600,000 seems, you know, kind of for a different era.
Yeah, again, I think maybe it would be worth me digging into the data a little bit more now that I'm hearing some of this. You know, where the 300,000 came from, you know, somewhat arbitrary, I think, and then we asked for and then we asked for doubling because essentially the pot doubled, right? But it's still like, I get it. You're right, it's not really getting at what we're looking at for
It came from a
projects.
particular senator who's no longer with us, you know. Because he basically had the same concept that I share now, is he wanted to make sure it got spread out.
Yeah.
But it was somewhat arbitrary, you know, but that was the thought behind it.
Nothing to screw with that.
And then I just was reiterating the changes that we've requested here, so.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I just sort of suggest this, again, just sort of upstream thinking a bit. The federal dollars, if you accept federal dollars, I know this, the town's perspective, you know, you have to follow federal and state rules about how the project happens. So we've learned in our town that if we really want to protect the character of the area and those kinds of things are important to try and do as much as possible to pay for those improvements on our own dime. So so where I'm headed with this is we do have a small pot of state money, I believe, that is just raised with state dollars that allows more flexibility to towns to build kind of, you know, not quite the gold-plated projects that are required if you accept federal money, right? So maybe we can look at this as a higher cap is appropriate if we're using these dollars for bigger projects, like, you know, that could be transformative in a community, for example, such as in the instance of my town, Shelburne. But this approach might lead to opportunities to have a larger pot of defederalized dollars that we could then use for smaller projects in a wide variety of communities. Often that last mile, first mile, I mean, something small can really be the thing that helps that community very much. And this could be a way to start to do some of that. I remember a couple of years ago, Charlie Baker from the Chittenden County RPC came in and said that if you really want to do more with limited dollars for bike ped, try to have defederalized dollars was the best way to do that. So I'm just throwing that out there. We're going to have this great multimodal guidance coming online soon, and we will have a lot of tools and wherewithal that we don't have at the moment at our disposal to maybe do this. So just thinking ahead for how we meet.
So I think what you're referring to is what we call our small scale bike ped program.
Exactly, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And just something to consider there is that program is intended to be sort of quick hits, you know, get it done, and it's 50-50.
Yeah.
So it requires a municipality to cover half the cost. It's only for implementation purposes, not for any sort of design.
But the RPCs can often help out with that.
Yeah, and honestly, we've had projects that are really sort of back of the page or back of the napkin type designs. And they hire a local contractor to do them. So there is a fit there for,
Yeah,
but it's sort of limited in scale of what it can do.
Yeah, I'm just sort of thinking, you know,
Yeah.
how do we do more with less
Yeah.
kind of
Mhm.
approach, yeah.
But what's on the table is federal money.
Right.
And the local match, so.
Yes. Yep.
The other one is the downtown fund, right, that you're referring to?
Uh,
The
So
other-
that's state dollars.
Yeah, that's state.
And that's transferred over to ACC.
Right,
Yeah, that's-
right.
Small
outside
bike
of
ped
the
is, you're talking about the small scale bike.
small scale bike ped is through municipal assistance, correct?
Oh, okay.
That's state transportation funding,
Yeah.
50-50 share.
Okay.
So if you would like, I'll follow up with some more specific data. I mean, like I said, if you do have it, I'll break it down a little bit to show you sort of more average costs on what we were getting. I mean, essentially it's about $500 a linear foot for sidewalks and a shared use path So as long as you're not having any major drainage improvements or fire hydrants and water lines and bridges, obviously, which breaks down to about 1,500 feet of sidewalk on a $600,000 grant.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm good. I mean, I think the question is, do we change the amount? I'd be all right with going to 100% at this point. And maybe we leave the amount the way it is now because we really only have one more year to find, or a year before we'll find out how much more funding we get. And it sounds like, although it's more work, you found a way to sort of help communities who are.
You have one more year.
Then it's gonna go down to 300.
Well, we don't
So it'll
know.
go down to 300.
Oh.
We also have one more year to get these funds obligated. And we, like I said, we left like $2 million on the table. So next year, we're gonna be looking to award $6.5 million.
Yeah.
And if you start, again, what happens when we can't make those awards? That's the worry.
Point.
And if I could share, just, again, the split aside, there are those supplemental funding sources for a bike ped project, but not necessarily for the environmental mitigation. So if we do award a salt shed project, the cap 600,000, and if they have a, let's just say $800,000 dollar salt shed, that's 200,000 on top of the match for the 600,000. And there isn't really an obvious alternative or supplemental funding source.
So we need to, unless there's I think you're raising your hand, go right ahead.
Well, why don't we bump up the amount to like, say, 800,000? And go with 100%? Would that get the money out the door for you? You want more?
It's hard to say. I mean, the better flexibility, the more flexibility we have, obviously, the better for the agency.
And that comment.
Or go temporary, put, right? You need to get it out in a year? Put a year and a half limit or something on it there. Then change the dollar amount back down if that's what we decide to do, but.
So, for clarification wise, Logan, our Ledge Council and JFO are coming back in right after lunch, and what they're looking for, what I'm looking for, and it doesn't have to happen in the next 2 minutes, either we give them direction to more specifically what they bring in after lunch, or they come in and then we hash it out with them. So so Representative Casey made a suggestion of considering 800,000 and going with 100%. I'm looking for a sort of response either to that or to the transportation proposal over the next 10 minutes, so we can, if we're going to give direction to our Ledge Council, or if we're going to work on it over lunch, they'll come in ready to kind of somewhat move in that direction, or we'll hash it out some more right after lunch.
So just to add a little numbers to this, I went down through your impossible spreadsheet to read. Thank God for magnification. 13 of those 40 were over 600,000. 2 of them were over 1.2 million. So that meant that 11 of those were less than 1.2. So it's not as if you go to 1.2, you're going to give away just 3 projects, that type of thing. You're going to be incrementally, and then you're going to decrease your overall overhead administrative cost. So I don't have any trouble going to 1.2 per year.
And at least 75, 25 or 100 and go to all the way to give them 100%.
I would give them 100%, just because in this 1 year, so that you can get it out the door. Right? Is that what we're trying to do?
Yeah.
But again, just for purposes, we will be discussing again next year,
Yeah.
because it'll go down to 300,000 the following year.
If we
Right, we
don't
don't
address
want-
the sunset, that.
Right.
Well,
That's also-
well, that's over and above the sunset. Yeah, gotcha.
Go ahead, Representative White.
Yeah, can we also address the sunset and push that out a couple?
I just think we should just create the floor at 600,000 now, go to 1.2 for a year, come back to it, go to 100%, call it a day.
And the floor was what, I'm sorry.
300,000.
It was 300, you're saying move it to 600.
600, go to 1.2 for a year. I know it's kind of mean, it's could be a headache, but that'd be my comfort level. Yeah.
I just have one further question, which is there, does it make sense to do a secondary grant
Yeah.
period in the fall? Given that I think you've just completed one to get
We
more?
started this in the fall.
Okay, so it's,
So it's, you know, we give a lot of time and then we're just about to jump into our bike ped grant. And those are sort of strategically placed the way they are, they have been, to provide municipalities
Oh,
a
yeah.
couple bites at the apple.
right,
Or if they needed some supplemental funding for a project, you know, they had two chances at it throughout the year. I mean,
okay, so the.
Depending on what happens here,
System, and
right,
just you need to be able to
exactly.
get out more
and
money.
depending on what happens here, you know, we might consider how we make changes to those programs.
I don't think we can do that, but
Yeah, no, we can't, but I just,
Were you looking for a decision?
I'm looking for feedback to say where we're at in terms of cap, flexibility on the, anywhere from the 50-50 it is to now up to, I've heard up to the 100. And looking to give direction. We are still not, this is not the final decision, but it's direction to say for our ledge council to bring it back to us after lunch of what we want it to look like, if you can do that in that timeframe. So I also just want to clarify. As the water quality projects are not being eliminated, they're just, their weight is being, they're still eligible for these projects completely. We are not suggesting that we're not wanting water quality projects. What we're saying is that we need to address this federal issue and try to get things out. I believe that's my understanding.
It is, that is true. And you'll also see in the white book, there's the municipal mitigation program. That's a supplemental piece of this. So there is, it's like, it's not a tremendous amount of money, but it's another 1.2-ish million of federal funds that is eligible for those same types of projects. So.
Okay, so you were looking to comment onto that, Representative Riley, or not? I'm not sure.
I just wanted to second what Rep. Corcoran had said.
So what you're saying, and that's sort of where Representative Casey was saying, Representative, the 100% flexibility, the 600 and 1.2, or even more up to 600, then the cap up to 1.2, and revisit in a year.
yeah, like, but, you know, just when we know, like in October, whenever they get the bill.
Did I miss that? Did you have a comment back there? I'm sorry, I wasn't sure if you were getting my attention on that or not. Is that?
Oh, no, I mean, for what it's worth, the agency fully supports that.
You have more there?
Well, I'm just thinking of the way that the notwithstanding language is currently in the T-bill. I mean, we need the flexibility in our awards this time next year. So I think the way it's written, I think it says that the awards are based on that fiscal year. So I think as long as it's clear in fiscal year 27 that 1.2,
Aiming.
yeah.
All right, so if I tell him that you want to understand the testimony, just listen to the last 5 minutes. Yes?
Yeah,
Are we, other concerns across? All right. I'm sorry, did you want to comment? We have 2 minutes. We can, unusually, but yes, please.
Thank you, Chair Walker. For the record, Richard Amore, local motion. Appreciate your testimony. Appreciate working with the agency to come to this conclusion. Just a question, especially because it seems like it's having a hard time sometimes giving away the dollars. Understand that from being in state agency for many years. Why wouldn't we want to have more flexibility for that $600 million next year to go out and open up the door for safe routes to school funding? The state highway safety office funding can fund these projects. Those fundings are very competitive. There's a lot of demand from the communities we serve and community members on prioritizing funding for safe routes to school. If we're having a hard time giving away TAP funding, why wouldn't we make it eligible for communities, organizations to apply to support that upstream or that additional technical assistance, especially in rural communities and rural schools that don't have the capacity to do that work?
Yeah, so I don't know that I'm sitting here necessarily saying that we've said it's not, infrastructure projects are eligible, 100%, right? It's the education component that we don't have a good handle on, and highway safety is working on that right now to develop an implementation, that's probably not a good word to use there, but a strategy to basically implement a new outreach educational component of Safe Routes to School. Initial conversations had said, yes, highway safety was the right place to fund that, but good point. Maybe we should consider it through TAP grants, something that will we'll continue that conversation.
Yeah, it just opens it up for eligibility, so you don't leave dollars on the table.
Yeah.
$200,000 to fund technical assistance will go a lot more way on the rent back than building 400 feet of sidewalk.
Right. Yeah.
Because you can't build 400 feet of sidewalk for 200 grand.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, the federal requirements wouldn't preclude having that educational piece.
Right,
It's not-
correct.
It's eligible.
It is, right.
Seems reasonable too, because I'd agree with what you're saying, that, that it could, go into 15 small villages and towns. So
It's spreading the love around,
Yeah.
providing support to rural communities and not leaving money on the table.
would the language need to show that they're eligible?
I mean, we would just have to change our sort of, the way that we solicit for grants, but, yeah.
The law doesn't have to change.
No.
But we have a priority for ped bike, and we could say, and safe routes to school or educational.
Well, I would be opposed to that.
Yeah.
But explicitly making it an eligible thing right now in the program guidelines, this is infrastructure related, and calling it out specifically would be good to say that the soft things like technical assistance, education, and awareness are eligible.
If I hear a clarification, you're asking about a clarification, then that says they are, you're saying they are eligible. You're asking to be clarified in the bid or the proposal.
Right.
Making it more clear that this could be.
But again, like, what I'm saying is there's another group funding through highway safety that's doing something very similar. And I, would have to confer with them to see, we've sort of talked about it. They've implemented a project that's in the budget right now. And I'm just not sure for purposes of this, like if that's the right way to go. Yeah,
All right.
that's all.
So for where we're at right now, I appreciate the feedback. Somebody will have to pick that up in the jam. From here forward, we are adjourned until 1:15. And we're going to pick back up